Welcome to Unplanned and Untold, a podcast that dives into the real-life, unexpected twists of facing an unplanned pregnancy in college. Join us as we listen to the unplanned and untold stories of those who have overcome the odds in order to achieve their goals. Welcome back to another episode of Unplanned and Untold. I'm your host, Caitlin Willing, and today our extraordinary guest is a woman whose life journey is a testament to resilience and determination. From the challenges of a teenage pregnancy to her remarkable journey through higher education, motherhood, and a distinguished career in nursing, her story is both inspiring and empowering. Buckle up as we delve into her unexpected journey filled with triumphs, setbacks, and a deep commitment to advocating for under-resourced mothers everywhere. Randy, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Oh, I have been so excited. I know we have had scheduling issues here and there, and your story is just so amazing. I'm so excited to dive in because you really have defeated a lot of odds. Like you've overcome so much in your life, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear just the resiliency that you've demonstrated over the years.
Okay, well, goodness, I'm 57 years old today. And when you ask me that question, it brings me back as though it was just yesterday because the emotions are just so raw.
Mm.
So when I think back, goodness, I discovered I was pregnant just after high school graduation. Had dated, I guess you would call my high school sweetheart for several years. Was planning on leaving, going away to college, and it was, needless to say, it was quite a shock.
Wow. So where were you planning to go to college?
Planning to leave for St. Louis University. I grew up in Chicago, so not too far from home, but certainly not any sort of commuting distance. It was away, so I was leaving the state in just about 2 months from the time that I realized I was pregnant.
Wow. So how did you find out? Were you feeling sick? Did you have an inkling? Did you miss a period? What did that look like?
Well, it's been so long ago now, but I would say it was all of the above,
Yeah.
Caitlin. And so yes, that's exactly how I found out. It's interesting. If I recall, I even had a test, took a home test that didn't show positive, and I just had a feeling. And I did end up going to a center, and they
Okay.
confirmed it.
Okay. And who did you share the news with? I mean, I can't imagine you're wrapping up your high school career, about to head into college, and this is like major life altering news.
Yes, it sure was. So, at that point, it was really just my baby's father at the time. I had not shared it with anyone, not family, sisters, cousins, friends, no one.
Oh, that is so heavy. That's such a heavy secret to carry
It
into a
was.
very transitional point in your life. So, initially, what were your thoughts as far as did you think you could parent the baby and go to college? What were your ideas?
Sure. Well, initially, and my focus was okay, so how am I going to be able to still stay on track, leave for school, and yet, find a way? Didn't really understand the way. I remember just thinking more about, well, so what could be my options when I get there? And, growing up, I was aware of agencies like Catholic Charities. And I thought, well, okay, we're going to stay on track. I'll get to school and I'll reach out to that agency and let's see what I can do. So initially, I was really thinking I was going to place my child up for adoption. That was my initial reaction and response was, okay, I did not want to burden my parents at the time. I was very concerned about that. I
Right.
grew up in, blue collar home, but dad worked several jobs and did not want to impact them financially. So
Mm.
this was really just a difficult time, very traumatic. Um, I just remember being very withdrawn at the time.
Mm. And looking at resources at the university, did they offer anything?
They really did not, but I mean, honestly, this is not something that I shared again, even when I got there. So I can remember that whole journey, and of course, we didn't have Google back then or
Right.
phones. I don't even remember how I figured it all out, but somehow you looked it up and it was
Right.
nowhere near the university. I just remember having to take some sort of trolley type transportation. I didn't have a vehicle uh, down to social services or Catholic social services. And
Right.
they were very kind. I remember there being a social worker there who was very supportive and like, we're going to help you walk through this. I remember them connecting me to like the health department and learning how to just navigate things like, okay, so prenatal care, right?
Right.
And um, WIC, right? Make sure that I'm eating well. And that was really how the whole journey began. And of course, connecting with a physician practice in a
Right.
place where I was planning to deliver, which was far, far away from home.
Absolutely. Navigating Medicaid, WIC, all of those things so young and not having somebody help guide you through that process, it's daunting. I mean, I
Yes.
remember it like it was yesterday, especially the WIC piece of it. I don't know when you were on WIC, but they used to have these vouchers when I was on WIC. Was it the same back then?
Yes, they did, and they had I guess it was a green. I think it was a green card of some kind, like
Yes.
for identifying yourself as the Medicaid mom.
Yeah.
And it was not a very good experience. I would actually call it traumatic.
Yes.
You
Hands
were
down.
not treated well,
No.
anywhere, whether it be in the food line, getting your groceries,
Yep.
or whether it be at your appointments, medical appointments. And it's sad to say, consider I'm in healthcare
Right.
today, but it
Right.
was it was not a pleasant experience at that time.
I have vivid memories of that green card. It was big and they don't do it anymore, which is awesome. But it was like this whole folder, and you had to pick out, for those of you listening who've never experienced what it's like being on WIC, you had to pick out the exact food that was on your voucher. And it was very confusing because if it said, box of cereal, it had to be the exact amount and the exact brand. And when you would go to the cash register, you'd have to divvy up all of your groceries and put the voucher next to the item and then separate it, put the voucher next to the item. And I remember just being so embarrassed in line at the grocery store because it would take
Yes.
forever. They would scan the item, then they'd have to look at the voucher. And a lot of times my item didn't match the voucher and they'd say, sorry, this doesn't qualify. And I just remember wanting to just melt into the floor as the people behind me were, number one, inconvenienced by me, but number two, I was so embarrassed that I was on government help. And like you said, treated a little bit differently than everybody else.
That was a great description. And I do recall feeling very much the same way. And, just thinking about basics that weren't even included, like
Yeah.
paper towels,
Right.
cleaning products. So you did
Yeah.
have to budget, you had to plan, and oftentimes it was embarrassing. You were holding up the line.
Absolutely. And with your medical appointments, was your facility a separate facility for government medical appointments than like your typical OBGYN and OB office?
So it was an actually no, it was hospital. It was
Okay.
a hospital not far from the campus. Well, I
Okay.
shouldn't say not far. It certainly required public transportation.
Yep.
It was across town. So
Wow.
I was blended in with any other mom who was delivering, but it just wasn't. I wouldn't say it was patient centered or some of the things that we really aim to do today.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and I do also recall it's like yesterday. I can still remember, and I'm a nurse, but I still remember interacting with uh, a nurse who was essentially in charge of the clinic.
Right.
And I remember being at the desk and, just pictures almost like the DMV where there's
Yeah.
seats and all these folks are like
Yes.
sitting behind you and they're asking you personal questions. And
Yes.
I'm standing at the desk and maybe I'm just too old. And this was before HIPAA. It was 1984, right?
Uh-huh.
But when I think back and the questions they were asking, but
Mhm.
then I remember the advice that I wasn't even asking for. I still
Oh,
remember her saying, you need to make a choice.
yeah.
You cannot complete school and still be a mother. That's what she said. This was advice from a very influential person.
Right.
And maybe in retrospect, I could thank her because
Right.
up to that point, I think I was like this deer in headlights, sort of just going through the motions. But when she said that, it
Mm.
was like this fire,
I
and my
love
belly was
that.
like, think again.
Watch me, watch me. It's
Right.
so true. Back in Auburn, they used to have a special medical clinic for moms that were on government insurance, and it was
Mhm.
separate. So right from the get-go, you felt like you were less than, and you were treated as less than, because I've experienced both now. And the health department, it's since been shut down, but that OB clinic health department was just, man, it was not the nicest experience. And I, same as you, I remember one of the medical assistants telling me, if you were my daughter, type advice. And I dreaded it. I dreaded my appointments. I dreaded the embarrassment that came with it. And I think we've come a long way in talking about it and making it a part of casual conversation. It's going to help us fill in the gap so that other women don't have to experience these same things.
That is so true. We have come a long way, and I'm grateful for that.
So am I. So walk me through your professors. You hadn't told anybody at this point, just the father of the baby. Do you tell them you're pregnant? I mean, I'm assuming they're going to start noticing at some point.
Yes, and that's really about how it all happened, Caitlin, is I was in an auditorium type class, and I must have been showing at that point. I still remember kind of having to adjust how I sat even in the seat, even though I was about half the size as I am now, pregnant. But I remember at the time this professor making eye contact, and this was not a small class. Again, this is a big university, so at least at the time it felt like there had to be several hundred, over 100 in that room. But I was in my dorm. Of course, it was an all-girls dorm later that day, and there was a knock at my door, and it was a nursing student.
Mm.
And this nursing student was sent by this particular professor
Wow.
who noticed I was pregnant and sent her. Uh, it's embarrassing to say, but at the time, the help was not welcome. Let's be
Right.
honest, right? Like, hey, I was being very private at the time. The last thing that somebody wants to hear is that I'd like for you to be my project, right?
Right.
My student
Yes.
project. I was like, just go away, leave me alone.
Yes.
But I really did. I think she made a second attempt, and I did accept her help. And at that point, she was very, very sweet. And I think at that point, she approached me in a way that I was helping her, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, of
I will
course,
help you.
yes, yes. And that was again one of the forms of support that made, oh my goodness, such a difference. Can't say enough about this person who I've never stayed in contact with. I don't know her last name.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
I've tried to look her up. Actually, she
Oh
was
my goodness.
incredible because part
Wow.
of my journey, of course, you're an all girls Catholic college, right?
Right.
Well, eventually, maybe it was through professor, maybe it was a conversation with my advisor. I can't recall, but of course, I had a partial scholarship and my housing was all included there. Well, moms and babies can't be
Mm.
in a single, a woman's like dorm.
Right.
So I did not qualify for married housing, of course, when I'm
Right.
married. So I do remember getting the letter in the box that basically said as of a certain date, I was going to lose my housing.
Oh my
So it
gosh.
was again, I still remember it's hard to remember that far back as to how I ended up hearing about a place, but not too far. Like I was literally on campus. It was
Right.
kind of an older building above a pharmacy, and there were many apartments,
Yep.
but they were not limited. It's certainly not student housing at
Right.
all. And that same girl or young nursing student, I still remember her going there with me. And this was a little furnished studio. I mean,
Okay.
bad. It was rough. It was very
Yep.
rough.
Yep.
Um, in retrospect, I was just thinking about it. Somebody had to be subsidizing. They probably just didn't want
Mm.
me to know about it
Right.
because I only paid $80 a month. So
Wow.
we know there are no, even back then, there were
Yeah.
no apartments at that cost.
Right.
But I bet I had some some philanthropist out there who was just
Mm.
looking out for me.
Oh my
Uh, just
gosh.
went right over my head because
Oh my
it was
goodness.
rough. But the same student, I still remember her scrubbing floors and just trying to get this place livable. And that's where I stayed. So I never truly lost housing. I went from one
Right.
place to another. But certainly, if there was a baby steps, that would have been a game changer at that point in time, especially because of the community, the support. Um, you're so isolated when
So
you're out
isolated.
there.
I bet.
Yeah.
Those memories of that, the housing, I'll never forget them either. When you move into a place like that, because my story is very similar to yours. I was living with
Yes.
sorority sisters. I lost the opportunity to keep my housing and I didn't have credit to be able to
Mhm.
apply for, loans or to be able to apply for just simple apartment applications. I needed
Mhm.
co-signers. And the only place I was able to get because my sister co-signed on it was this little place that, I mean, there was black mold growing in this apartment. It was horrendous. But you
Yes.
know what? Humble beginnings. It got the
Yes.
job done. It was a
Yes.
roof
Yes.
over my son and I's head. But every time I go back to Auburn, I do drive by that place. And I think,
Aw,
man, a lot of memories in that rundown little place. I don't even know, I've been gone out of Auburn for a few years. It may not even still be up at this point.
right.
It was so bad. But it does. It makes us who we are today. But at some point, you're going to have to go home as a college student, or do you stay at college over Christmas break?
Well, no, that's a great question, Caitlin, and that's really how it all came about. My baby was born in February,
Okay.
so it would have been around the time for Christmas break that, somewhere along the lines, I know I made a decision to parent
Mm,
Chris, my son.
okay.
So I knew at that point, okay, well, I'm going home. And honestly, my resistance or hesitancy with not telling them was because A, didn't want to cause them worry, right?
Right.
Did not want to also
Oh,
put any financial burden on them. And I was concerned that I almost wouldn't have a choice and
mm,
be brought back home. And I
mm,
and I just wanted to be able to at least get through the first year.
wow.
In my head, at least, I had a plan that if he was delivered almost at the very end of February, so it was only about a month and a half after he was born that I had to figure out right before summer break.
Right.
So at that point, it was approaching December, and I believe what I did was I think I first wrote him a letter
Oh,
before coming. So it wasn't as though surprise and
right.
just, came home. But I just wanted to be able to at least put things into words. And they were very supportive. So I
Mm,
came home.
oh,
And as anticipated, there was absolutely some resistance with you cannot go back. There's no way you can
right.
go back. You can't go
How?
back. I'm going back. So,
Oh, you're so determined. You were so determined to do it, even on your own. I resonate so much with that.
mhm.
Oh my goodness. So, baby's born in February. You're still in
Yes.
school. You're hitting midterms. How the heck did you make that work?
Oh, well, it's funny you figured that one out too, because I still remember having a professor that allowed me. I had Chris like right at the time when there were midterms happening. At the time, gosh, it was pretty strict, and there were usually like no makeups whatsoever.
Mhm.
But I do remember some accommodations happening for me.
Wow.
I want to say one of them was like right after getting out of the hospital. We're talking like day after delivery. And somehow it all worked out. I didn't have to drop any classes.
Right.
And they were tough at the time. In fact, one of them I think was chemistry at the time, and that
Oh.
was one of the ones I had to take the day after.
That is so wild. And to
Yes.
navigate all of that on your own. I mean, it's it makes me think of having my children now, with a supportive husband and not in school. And I think back, I'm like, how the heck did you do that, girl? Like, how
Yeah.
did you figure it out? And I had my baby around finals. So it was the same kind of issue of like, I
Mhm.
remember my water broke and I
Oh,
had
wow.
an exam the next day. And I remember emailing my TA telling him like, "Hey, going to the hospital to have this baby. Guess I'll take it when I get back." Like, don't really know. But it's scary because you put so much hard work into your academics and then have to navigate finishing everything. So, how did you end up finishing school? I know you kind of took a little bit of a detour, correct?
I did. I sure did. So somehow made it through that last month and a half of school here in classes. I remember just figuring out childcare, and baby's dad was with me at the time, and we kind of juggled classes and all. But at that point, reality set in, and I realized, well, as much as I wanted to have a 4-year degree, and had a partial scholarship, I needed an income like
Mm-hmm.
now.
Right.
So I was able to go back to Chicago, transfer credits, went to a community college, and they didn't call it an accelerated program, but I remember getting special permission to just load up. I mean, I
Wow.
just loaded up those classes to, insanity. But I finished, within 2 years. And then I said, well, I do want to keep going. So I was able to graduate nursing school, take my nursing boards, and, you're able to work license
Gosh.
pending at that time.
Wow.
Um, Worked at Children's, got hired at Children's Memorial in
Mm.
Chicago, and as a NICU nurse, neonatal
Oh,
intensive care. And I worked nights, and I did end up starting my BSN not too far after that, while I was still working.
with
So
a
it was,
toddler at
oh
that
yes,
point.
yes, yes,
How?
it was
How?
interesting. It,
Oh
well,
my
I,
gosh.
I have an image one time when I woke up and Chris was standing above my head. I was trying, like, I work nights, right? So trying to be responsible mom. But yeah, I needed sleep, right?
Right. As we
But
all
I
do.
took a nap, and I still remember when he was standing above my head as a toddler, and somehow he got a hold of lipstick in the bathroom, and he did a mural above my head on the wall. So, okay, we've got to have a better plan.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And after getting your BSN, you continued on, correct?
I did. It was a bunch of years later,
Right.
but I did. Um, I was married at the time when I started my master's. I ended up
Wow.
with my master's in community or public health nursing.
Wow.
I was in a dual program at the time.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's when I ended up getting divorced. I had married actually my baby's father.
Okay.
We didn't get married though until my son was about 2.
Okay.
Again, my at that time I was just very intent on getting married for the right reasons, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I thought I had a happy marriage, but unfortunately, didn't work out.
Right.
So I did end up getting divorced when I was finishing my master's. So I had to sadly drop one of the masters. I went a dual. I was in an MPH and
Oh
MSN
gosh.
program at Northern Illinois University. So I had to drop the MPH, completed the masters, and later wasn't actually until I moved down to Alabama. Um, Gosh, it's been, I mean, it's just recent, 20, well, about 10 years now. I finished my doctorate. And again, it's nursing, was an executive track with a focus on community health, public health nursing. Uh, so it's been certainly a journey. But I will say, I mean, my graduate education, um, I really did it for the journey. I loved my classes. I was not on this, marathon, got to
Totally.
finish. It
Yeah.
was truly because I'm like, I guess call me a lifelong learner, I guess, but
Oh.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Wow. Do you feel your unplanned pregnancy impacted where you are today and what services you bring to the table with all of your
Yeah.
degrees and your career?
I would say yes.
Mm.
And I really think so more from the patient lens and the people that we serve. I'm one of my areas and passions has been in care coordination,
Mm.
case management, social services. And I've been doing that for years and years. In fact, going way back, my first role coming out of children's was actually I loved working with families, with patient teaching, and that's how I ended up in case management was in the pediatric side of things. So when I think about today, that's where I think my advocacy comes from. That
Sure.
lens is just knowing, we need to treat people not only better, but we often need to help people and give them a leg up
Mm.
when they're not coming from the same place, right?
Right.
So, how can we allow everyone to really flourish and uh, not only have a healthy pregnancy, but thrive and also allow the next generation, to thrive. So that's
Absolutely.
I would say that's been my passion and my purpose the last
Oh.
10 or 20 years.
Wow. I just love to see it. I root for the underdog now because I was the underdog as you were as well. And to see somebody take a very traumatic and trying part of their life and turn it into a fire and a passion, to share with other people and to help improve other people's lives is truly remarkable because it could have crippled you. It could have crippled you, or you could have just stopped after, the 2-year program or even the 4-year program, but you didn't. You pressed on through everything. And that is just so admirable.
Thanks, Caitlin. And again, I was I was blessed to have support,
Mm.
people that would just show up, like the example that I gave you.
Yes.
Even in my during my master's, I had just good friends and neighbors who were willing to. At that time, I had a young daughter, so I have a second child,
Right.
and I needed someone to watch Alex while I was finishing my graduate degree.
Right.
And at that time, online was not an option for
Mm.
masters. You had to be there at night for classes, and it wasn't next door. So again, just so grateful. Without, I think, each of those people being placed along the way in my journey, there's no way I'd be here
Mm.
today.
What were your initial thoughts when you heard about baby steps and what we're trying to do across the nation?
Goodness, I was so excited. And I will say, over the course of my life, I've also tried my best to. I enjoy giving back, and I have done a little bit of volunteer work in this space. Like when my
Right.
son was maybe 3, I remember facilitating a program. It was a peer-based program through the
Mhm.
YWCA called MYM, Meld Young Moms,
Okay.
and it was you committed for like a 2-year cohort, and it was peer-based. So again, these were all facilitated by former moms or young moms. Um, but yet it didn't offer what Baby Steps is offering.
Mm.
That was a totally different forum, and it was after the children were born.
Right.
Another time when I was living in another state in New York, I volunteered at a Heartbeat International pregnancy center for a bunch of years too, like just like a night a week.
Right.
But Baby Steps, when I then started to even hear some of the stories, it was like an initial connection because unplanned pregnancy is not the same for everybody. We all have different experiences.
Right.
But goodness, when you are set on your education and you're on a path
Mhm.
and life changes, um, you need people around you. And I'm just was really just touched by your story, Caitlin, and Michelle's, and just hearing about how you all have just again used even just trauma and what you all have overcome to create a better way for young moms to be able to thrive and just imagine the impact on their children, right? The next
Mm.
generation. So
Truly.
thank you for all
Oh,
that you're doing.
it's been an honor. And what's been really cool is since our doors opened in 2017, um, a lot of our student moms now are in the career force, and it's been so beautiful to start to see their stories blossom. We get them when they're in, the state of you swim or sink or swim, and
Mhm.
to be able to see them graduate, get their bearings, and move forward in life, watch them buy houses, watch them get married, watch them climb, the successful ladders. in their career space, it has been so rewarding to be able to see these things kind of, develop over the years. And so we are so appreciative of people like you who really support baby steps and help us make this a true opportunity, not only for girls in Auburn, but hopefully in Tuscaloosa and on other college campuses across the nation. And we couldn't do it without supporters like you. So thank you for being so invested in this cause.
Oh, it's so worthy, and I'm excited every time I get a notification about a new story, and I really do. I'm intentional about keeping up on it and just hearing from other people, and it's just beautiful. It's just a great testimony
Yes,
of hope and perseverance for so
absolutely.
many young women.
Yes. And so my final question to you today is if you could go back in time and give that teenager some advice as she's finding out she's pregnant going into college, what advice would you give her?
Goodness, my advice would be to be strong, or as strong as you can be in the moment.
Mm,
You don't have to have all of the answers. Make sure that you build a community.
hmm.
Don't be afraid to lean on others.
Yeah.
And just, I know it's hard to imagine this, but enjoy the journey.
Hmm.
Really do. And children are such a gift.
They
You know,
really
a
are.
degree is a degree, but
Hmm.
your child's a gift.
Hmm. You're giving them permission to slow down and enjoy it.
Yes. Yes.
And we all need to
Yes.
hear that. We
Yes. And
do.
they need encouragement.
Yes.
It is too easy to get caught up in the treadmill of
Hmm.
education and corporate world,
Hmm.
so there's a way you can do both. It's not a choice. Just set your
Absolutely.
pace and lean in.
I have chills. Randy, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and sharing your journey. I mean, it truly is remarkable, all that you have overcome. So thank you for taking the time to just be a source of inspiration for our listeners today.
Thank you, Caitlin. I've enjoyed
Absolutely.
it. Have a
Thank you
great day.
so much. And to all of our listeners, we hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye bye. We hope you enjoyed that episode, as we are committed to bringing you the real, raw stories of those who have defied the odds and achieved their goals. But we're not stopping there. We are dedicated to improving our podcast quality so that we can reach an even wider audience. If you believe in the power of these untold narratives, consider donating or sponsoring this podcast by visiting unplannedanduntold.com.